Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Givaradhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Madhava. Thank you very much. Ramanapati Prabhu and Dujamani Prabhu. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtrasha Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Pravikacharya Ashtrasha Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Anati Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastaprai Sudbhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we'll be reading several verses leading up to text 18. So we'll chant text 12. Tato grihit vamrita bhajanam harir babasha ishat smita shobhaya gira yadi abhyupetam kwa cha sadhu asadu va kritam maya vo vibhaje sudam imam tato grihitvam ritabhajanam harir babasa ishat smita shobhaya gira yadya yupetam kwacha sadhu asadhuva kritamaya vo vibhaje sudamimam tato grihitvam ritabhajanam harir babasha ishat smita shobhaya gira yabhyupitam kwacha sadhu asadhuva kritamaya vo bijate sudamimam tato grihitvam ritabhajanam harir babasha ishat smita shobhaya gira yadya Pyutpetam Kwacha Sadhu Asadhuva Kritam Maya Vo Vibhaje Sudamimam. Anyone online? Tapas, you there? I'm just kidding. Would you like to chant Tapas? Okay. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, please chant.
Yes, Govardhana Prabhu. Tato grihitva amrita bhajanam hari. Babasha isha smita shobhaya gira. Yagya vyupetam kvacha sadva sadhuva. Kritam mayavo vibhaje sudamimam.
Kritam mayavo vibhaje sudamimam. Okay. Tataha, thereafter. Gritva, taking possession of. Amrita Bhajanam, the pot containing the nectar. Harihi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, in the form of Mohinī. Babasha, spoke. Ishat, slightly. Smita Shobhaya, Gira, with smiling beauty and by words. Yadi, if, abhyupetam, promise to be accepted. Kvacha, whatever it may be. Sadhuva, whether honest or dishonest. Kritamaya, is done by me. Vaha, unto you. Vibhaje, I shall give you the proper share. Sudam, nectar. Imam, this. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, having taken possession of the container of nectar, smiled slightly and spoke in attractive words. She said, "My dear demons, if you accept whatever I may do, whether honest or dishonest, then I can take responsibility for dividing the nectar among you." Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot abide by anyone's dictation. Whatever he does is absolute. The demons, of course, were deluded by the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus Mohinī-mūrti got them to promise that whatever she would do, they would accept. The chiefs of the demons were not very expert in deciding things. Upon hearing the sweet words of Mohinī-mūrti, they immediately assented. "Yes," they answered, "what you have said is all right." Thus the demons agreed to accept her decision. Texts 14 and 15. The demigods and demons then observed a fast. After bathing, they offered clarified butter and oblations into the fire and gave charity to the cows and to the brahmanas and members of the other orders of society, namely the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, who were all rewarded as they deserved. Thereafter, the demigods and demons performed ritualistic ceremonies under the directions of the brahmanas. Then they dressed themselves with new garments according to their own choice, decorated their bodies with ornaments, and sat facing east on seats made of kusha grass. Purport. The Vedas enjoin that for every ritualistic ceremony, one must first become clean by bathing either in the water of the Ganges or Yamuna or in the sea. Then one may perform the ritualistic ceremony and offer clarified butter into the fire. In this verse, the words paridhyaya ahatani are especially significant. A sannyasi or a person about to perform a ritualistic ceremony should not dress himself in a clothing sewn with a needle. 16 and 17. O king, as the demigods and demons sat facing east in an arena fully decorated with flower garlands and lamps, and fragrant with the smoke of incense, that woman dressed in a most beautiful sari, her ankle bells tinkling, entered the arena, walking very slowly because of her big, low hips. Her eyes were restless due to youthful pride. Her breasts were just like water jugs. Her thighs resembled the trunks of elephants, and she carried a water pot in her hand. Text 18. Her attractive nose and cheeks and her ears, adorned with golden earrings, made her face very beautiful. As she moved, her sari's border on her breasts moved slightly aside. When the demigods and demons saw these beautiful features of Mohinī-mūrti, who was glancing at them and slightly smiling, they were all completely enchanted. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks here that Mohinī-mūrti is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a feminine form, and that the goddess of fortune is her associate. This form assumed by the Personality of Godhead challenged the goddess of fortune. The goddess of fortune is beautiful, but if the Lord accepts the form of a woman, he surpasses the goddess of fortune in beauty. It is not that the goddess of fortune, being female, is the most beautiful. The Lord is so beautiful that he can excel any beautiful goddesses of fortune by assuming a female form. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka and Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishri Vishabhanusita Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Vancha Kalpa Tribhischa Kripa Sandibhi Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, he asked this very wonderful question to Krishna. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? And Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Srila Prabhupada, he has a wonderful sense of humor. He took this word enemy, and he said the enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul. And where can this lust be found? Krishna says the senses, the mind, the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. And lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. Why are there advertisements? Why are there commercials? Because they know that they want to implant seeds in the mind, the senses, and the intelligence of the people. They want to portray many ways to try to enjoy this material world. Srila Prabhupada says that that material conditioned life begins with competition. And the real competition began by being jealous of Krishna. This material world is characterized by competition. Even at the very birth of one's life, the parents compare. Who does the child look like? Does the child look like me or the mother? You know. So even from the very beginning, there's this competition. But Krishna is the only enjoyer, and when one understands this, that soul also becomes happy, being part and parcels of Krishna. It's not that our happiness is different from Krishna, but when we can understand Krishna's happiness, then we naturally become happy. And fall down means we wanted to compete with Krishna or become Krishna. There's so many bogus goals that people have introduced, which is one, by chanting this mantra, you can become God. But Srila Prabhupada will always point out, if God is perfect, how can he forget that he's God? So this is illogical. The material bondage of this world is that a beautiful woman can captivate a handsome man, and that a handsome man can captivate a beautiful woman. I love telling the story. One of my best friends in high school, he wanted to cancel his membership at the gym. You know, he said, "Can you go with me?" I said, "Yeah, let's go. You know, let's cancel this membership. You know, you don't need this gym." Blah blah blah. As soon as we got to the counter and he said the words, "I want to cancel my membership," the man said, "Hold on, just a second." And he brought this so-called attractive woman in front of my friend, and my friend just completely forgot what he was what he was gonna do. And then the girl, instead of canceling the membership, she convinced him to extend his membership. And then when we went outside, he looked at me and said, "What just happened?" And I told him, I didn't call him Prabhu at that time. I said, "I think you've been tricked." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your membership is extended." And we just started laughing, you know. So the power of women is very attractive to a man, and then the features of a man is very attractive to a woman. Rishabhadev explains the nature of lusty attraction. He says the attraction between male and female is a basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. When a man and woman exchange feelings of lust, both of them are victimized, and thus they are bound to this material world in various ways. You know, it's interesting, this hard knot in the heart, you know. When people fall in love, you know, love at first sight, that's the only thing they can think of, you know. I guess they call it puppy love. It's like the smile they have is like the face that Sankarshan has right now, you know. You know, when is my lover gonna text me? When are they gonna call me, you know? And they can't stop thinking about this person, and everything revolves around the other person. And you know, heartache, it's not a very easy thing. Sometimes people don't deal with it properly. They want to take revenge and so on. So they become very petty, and then they destroy each other's lives. Srila Prabhupada, he would always appreciate when devotees would use their intelligence and take up responsibilities to show by example to the younger devotees. Srila Prabhupada, he would tell the story narrated by Mataji about common sense, intelligence, and the ability to be observant. You know, when we hear these pastimes in the Bhagavatam, we should see them as, Balaram Prabhu would say, cautionary tales, you know. What happens when we fall into these situations. So when Srila Prabhupada was a child during the rainy season in Kolkata, there would be a dripping pipe outside the window. And when Srila Prabhupada would hear the sound of the dripping, he would use it as a metronome. And he would practice his mridanga beats, you know, either going faster or slower, according to the drip of the rain. Another story is that there was a train called the Punjab Mail, and a man was applying for work there. And there was a question on the application. It said, "Have you ever ridden the Punjab Mail?" And the applicant said yes, many times. And then there was another question. How many trains are there on the Punjab Mail? Isn't it? If you've taken this train so many times, you'll be able to see how many trains or compartments there are. And so the person didn't know how many trains, so he didn't get the job. So common sense. And if you're intelligent, you'll be able to notice how many cars there are on the train. There's another story told by Srila Prabhupada. There were two men applying for a job, the same job, and one man had so many qualifications. But at the end of the interview, he forgot to close the door behind him. He didn't close the door properly. And then the second man, although he had none of the necessary qualifications for the job, he closed the door behind him. So the assistant of the director or the employer, he asked him, "Who will be hired?" And then he says, "Surely the man that's well qualified will be hired." And then the director said, "No, the person that closed the door behind him, because that person is able to be trained. but the person that's qualified is not. And Srila Prabhupada will also tell the story of there was a musician, an instructor, and he had two students. One student, he had so many experience with playing, let's say, the harmonium. And, he was also showing off to the instructor. So he said, okay, I'll accept you, and your fee will be 500 rupees. So the student said, okay. The other student came, and he didn't know anything about the harmonium, the keys, the melody, anything. So the instructor said, your fee will be 200 rupees. And when the first person heard this, he said, hey, why is your fee less than mine? I know more and more than you. I should have less. And then the instructor said, because now that you know things, it's very difficult to train you. Because people are stuck in their ways, they're very difficult to change their habits and thinking. And in relation to this, Queen Kunti, she said, my lord, your lordship can easily be approached only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty cannot approach you with sincere feelings. So in this material world, people may be materially qualified, high education, good birth, beauty, opulence, but since they're puffed up, they're not able to chant the holy name in a sincere mood. I was thinking about this. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Ananda Tirtha Maharaj, he was just here. And he was telling us the story of, he fasted, he was fasting, and his flight was delayed like 3 times. And he was very hungry, to the point where he just hid behind like a pillar and started chanting. And he said that was the best chanting he's ever had. When a person is materially exhausted from this world, they actually start looking for the absolute truth. But when is comfortable in life, they think this is it, this is the best that life can offer. And I love this analogy that women is compared to fire and men are compared to a butter pot. When you put them together, the butter melts and then the fire is put out by the butter, the clarified. So Srila Prabhupada said we should always keep them apart. And so this brings up the idea of association. If one associates with a foolish person who is like a dancing dog in the hands of a woman, then he cannot make any progress. The people that we surround ourselves with are very important. When Brahmachari here before, he would bring the people that he would preach to here, and they were young men doing this and that, but we were kind of worried about him, that he'll start taking on their character and so on. And eventually he did. He started dressing like them, and then he forgot the whole reason why he left the ashram. He said, I want to leave the ashram so I can preach better. It would give me better facilities. And I relate to this when Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers were sent to Europe. They were there to convert the people, but instead the people converted them. They came back with, trousers and a coat. So Maya, the illusory energy of Krishna, is very strong. And when a devotee becomes a little proud, the Supreme Lord sometimes exhibits his supreme power to dissipate the devotee's misunderstanding. The example of Lord Brahma taking the cowherd boys, and calves. He wanted to test Krishna's powers, and Krishna exhibited his wonderful illusory energy, and it actually put Lord Brahma in his place. Another example is King Indra, lifting of the Govardhan hill. And sometimes there's a debate or a confusion among the Hindus, who is topmost, Vishnu or Shiva. And we'll later read about it in the 8th canto, so maybe by then you'll have forgotten this. But Lord Shiva, he's known as Dhira, very sober. Nothing is able to agitate him, not even his wife. So Lord Shiva asked Krishna, I want to see this beautiful form of yours as Mohinī-mūrti, you know. And Krishna warned him. He said, are you sure? You know. So Lord Shiva, Krishna disappeared. And then Lord Shiva and Parvati, they were waiting, you know. And in the forest, they saw this young, very attractive girl. She was playing with the ball, bouncing it, you know. And it's described that his senses being agitated, Lord Shiva, victimized by lusty desires, began to follow her, just as a lusty elephant follows a she-elephant. You know, in India, how they capture elephants, this is the exact way. They would dig a large hole and cover it with leaves. And then they would have a she-elephant behind this hole. And the male elephant, wanting to touch the female elephant, would approach, you know, chase this elephant. And then eventually gets caught in the hole. And that's how they capture elephants. So similarly, our senses, they're captivated by this material world in the form of wealth, you know, the opposite gender or the same gender, whatever. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he remarks that Mohinī-mūrti dragged Lord Shiva to so many places, especially to where the great sages lived, to instruct the sages that their Lord Shiva had become mad for a beautiful woman. Thus, although they were all great sages and saintly persons, they should not think themselves free, but should remain extremely cautious about beautiful women. And anyway, there's some parts where Lord Shiva did some things. And it's described that after Lord Shiva recognized what he was doing, he smiled. And then it says that he was not embarrassed, but he was proud to be defeated by Lord Vishnu. That he had such a master that was able to even captivate Lord Shiva. So Krishna has his ways. And Srila Prabhupada would also describe that the mighty Julius Caesar was controlled by Cleopatra. You know, I was reading about this, and Cleopatra, she was 21 and Julius Caesar was 52 years old. And they had this open, public love affair. And when Julius Caesar was assassinated, she fell in love with his right-hand man, Mark Antony. And Cleopatra had children from both of these men. So even great personalities, they can be controlled by an attractive woman. And it says the difference between demons and demigods is that a beautiful woman very easily attracts the minds of demons, but she cannot attract the mind of a godly person. And Srila Prabhupada points out that shyness or modesty is what makes a beautiful woman attractive. But when this modesty is removed, then the woman will create devastation. Okay, it's almost time, so I'll tell some nice stories. At Balboa Park, I met this teacher, and she asked me, can you summarize some of the teachings or principles in these books? And I was thinking about this, and I told her, there's many ways to answer this, but one of the ways I would answer is that we should see all women besides one's own wife as a mother, to accept properties, others' properties, as trash on the street. We don't touch it because it doesn't belong to us. And we see the sufferings of others as our own. And she said, that is very nice. Wouldn't the world be wonderful if we give these teachings to everyone? She gave $100. And before she left, she said, "Thank you for being out here. We need more people like you." And people can appreciate the teachings of the Bhagavatam, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. I was at the harbor, and there was this party boy, smoking. He's very good looking, attractive. But he developed this nasty habit of smoking. And so he was waiting for his friends smoking on the cigarette, and I approached him. And he said, no, reading isn't my thing. And he said, but if it has to do with women, I'm all in. So I was trying to think of ways to, attract them to the books. So I told him, maybe you should read this book. It's called Coming Back, and it talks about reincarnation. And then he said, you mean I can reincarnate as a bird? And I told him worse than that. You can incarnate as a thing that you are most attached to, which is a woman's body. And then he was holding his cigarette for some time. He didn't even take another puff. And I told him that the last thought or desire at the time of death, and due to your karma, a man will enjoy your body, just like you've enjoyed the body of women. And then when his friends arrived, he was looking at the girls in a different way. And then he thought about what I said. He took the book, and then he gave a donation. And then he said, I'll think about this, And he put out his cigarette, and he went along with his friends. Last night at the Krishna Lounge, there was this Mataji. Her name is Sarah. She sat in the front, and she claimed to be Christian and Muslim. And then she said, now I'm also Hindu. And then she said, Hinduism is the root of all the religions, And she's been reading Bhagavad Gita, and she was asking a lot of nice questions, actually. And then she said this Krishna consciousness movement, it blew my mind, because I told her Sanskrit, the scriptures, the eternal beginnings or eternal appearance of the Vedas, things like that. And then we also discussed the 4 regulative principles, and she said she's been celibate for 8 years. And then she said, wow, these 4 regulative principles is exactly like the Islam faith, She said, I'm going to start coming around more. And then I discussed with her about how eating cows is actually a great sin and an act of violence towards a mother. And she was kind of clueless. She said, why a mother? So I used the argument that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used on the Chand Kazi, If you take cow's milk, we should accept her as a mother. And she agreed. She said yes. And I said, what religious group would allow the killing of the mother and eating the mother? And then she stayed quiet. And I said, so this is a contradiction in many religions. And then she said, that makes sense. And then she said, I might give up eating meat. I said, that'll be very good, not only for your spiritual life, but for your health and the environment and so on. So she appreciated our conversation. And I told her, if you can, please come to our programs. Transcendental Taco Tuesday here, at Krishna Lounge on Thursday. And we also have an event on Fridays in Chula Vista. And she said, that's a little too far. And I said, so please come. Also on Sundays, we have our Sunday feast. And she was a very nice person, and she was appreciating the association of the devotees. And she was also glorifying the prasadam that Sankarshan made. She said, this is the best food Indian food I've ever had, She said, it's so flavorful and doesn't overpower one another. And she was just appreciating prasadam. And then so I told her I have to go. I wake up very early, and she said, thank you for your time. I know it's very valuable. So I left Mahima Mataji and Bhakta Nelson in her care. Okay, that's my little class. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Tujamani Prabhu.
This is from text 18. the purport. It says that this form assumed by the personality of Godhead challenged the goddess of fortune. The goddess of fortune is beautiful, but if the Lord accepts the form of a woman, he surpasses the goddess of fortune in beauty. Just wondering if you could clarify a little bit.
Sure.
It says that the Lord accepts the form of a woman and then surpasses the goddess of fortune and beauty, like that. He accepted the form of Mohinī-mūrti. But then he also, maybe it's not correct understanding, but as far as I understand, he also accepts the form of the goddess of fortune. So how is that he surpasses the goddess of fortune?
Well, the goddess of fortune ultimately comes from Radharani. That's her expansion. All goddess is described in the spiritual world. Every lady there is a goddess of fortune, and in the Brahma Samhita. But many people are chasing after Mohinī-mūrti. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, because she possessed everything that everyone wanted. Beauty, fame, wealth, and all of that. But in comparison to Krishna, having the form of a female form, Krishna is the source of all of that, So that's my understanding, is that, people may accept Lakshmi Devi to be most beautiful, but it says here that the Lord is so beautiful that he can excel any beautiful goddess of fortune. Dravida Prabhu, you have any?
I think, I'm just thinking, because goddess of fortune, as wonderful as she is still energy. She's Ladini Shakti. But Mohinī-mūrti is not energy. She's the energetic. Mm-hmm. And so just as, Krishna surpasses all in beauty and wealth and all the other opulences, so he also surpasses even his own energies.
That reminds me of this pastime of Lord Shiva. Cupid tried attracting Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was very angry, so he burnt Cupid to ashes. But Krishna was able to attract Lord Shiva, Yes, Bhakti Chad?
Well, it makes me think that Krishna wouldn't even have to be in the form of a woman.
Okay. Well, when Krishna appeared here, there were still many kings that saw him in a mythical way, But Srila Prabhupada will explain that when Krishna entered Mathura, everyone saw Krishna differently, The cowherd men, or they saw this the perfection of a person, and then the ladies, they saw that the most beautiful male form, and I think also the people that were very strong, they saw how they saw Krishna as like the strongest, Yes, Dravida Prabhu.
That was when he was entering the wrestling arena.
Mm.
And so it also describes Kamsa, so his death personified, so like that.
Thank you very much. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
May I?
Please.
Yes. Thank you very much. Your most kind and about pranams, Govardhan Prabhu. Do you mind reading again the first sentence to the purport of text 12?
Give me a minute.
Yes, take your time.
The demons, of course, were... Is this the last sentence of the purport translation?
No, the first sentence of the purport.
Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot abide by anyone's dictation.
Yes, that is the quote. Thank you very much. Based on this quote, my question would be, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot abide by anyone's dictation, why is it that we see Krishna abiding by the dictations of Arjuna while being his charioteer in the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada will explain that although Krishna is unconquerable, he's conquered by the devotee's love. So Bhakti can conquer Krishna. And also Krishna took pleasure in serving his devotees. Just like the devotee, the pure devotee, they want to please Krishna. So this wonderful reciprocation. Krishna also wanted to protect his devotee, because he knew that this battle of Kurukshetra, this war, was going to be a very extreme battle between his own armies and the Pandavas. And, you know, to accept the role of a charioteer is actually one of the signs that Krishna is, yeah, you can say renounced from this role, and also the love he has for his devotees. That's the best I could do, Vijay Prabhu. Okay.
And if I may say it, you did it very well. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Dravida Prabhu has something to add.
I would say that where he says he cannot abide by anyone's dictation, what he really means is that he doesn't have to abide by anyone's dictation. Because you think of, you know, like you said, that Arjun, you know, he willingly abided by it. Or Mother Yashoda, sometimes, you know, sometimes he doesn't abide, but oftentimes he does abide. So he doesn't have to. This is the idea, is that where others do, you know, when someone more powerful is saying dictation, okay, you know. But there's no possible question of Krishna doing something against his will. So it's his own will that does it, but it's in the form of a dictation from another, and that's in, you know, in the intimate lila that he has. He will abide. You know.
Thank you very much. This reminded me of this guest here. His name was Astro. Maybe you guys remember him. Vijay Prabhu was giving class, you know, and he said, I have a question. He said, is there anything higher than Krishna? You know, and Vijay said, no, there's nothing. And then Astro, he said, there is devotional service. Oh, he said, you're wrong. Devotional service, you know, and everyone went crazy.
We're back in the kitchen. You're in the kitchen. Yeah, we're back in the kitchen. Wait, you Mother, and me? Yeah.
Yeah, and then everyone was like, oh, and it's true, you know, devotional service is, yeah. But we shouldn't take that very cheaply, you know. Mukunda Char Prabhu, you have something to say?
This is, I'm not exactly sure how to formulate this, but it was just something I was thinking about, that I was thinking that technically speaking, what Mohinī-mūrti accomplished, what Krishna accomplished in this feminine like avatar of Mohinī-mūrti, that could have been accomplished by Srimati Radharani appearing. It could have been accomplished by other goddesses of fortune. It could have been accomplished by other exalted, beautiful female personalities appearing. But I was just thinking that would be so weird. Mm-hmm. That would have been like for a number of reasons. Like it didn't have to be Krishna as Mohinī-mūrti to bewilder the demons. You could have sent Srimati Radharani could have appeared, but you don't see that in that Radharani or any gopis or any, you know, of these female personalities ever appear for the sake of like accomplishing like a task like that. Like Krishna doesn't like send out, you know, Radharani like to trick the demons, something like that. And actually, if you can imagine how weird, I don't even like. That's why I'm like debating like how to formulate. Like you even just kind of like imagine, it's very gross, you know. The idea of like just see how the demons responded to Mohinī-mūrti. We would all be quite disturbed if you were reading something like that about them, like, you know, looking at and speaking to like Radharani in that way. It'd be very, very, and like a gopi, that would be very disturbing. And so that is just something on my mind. I was thinking that, but it could have been. Krishna didn't have to appear in a feminine form. There's so many female devotees or females who could have accomplished it, but it's not weird when Krishna does it. It doesn't gross me out when Krishna takes on a female form and then goes, and then they're, you know, what's the term? What's the term when you're like
enchanted?
no, it's like oog, what is it? Like ogling, that's the word? Yeah, so like they're all ogling over, you know, a woman, but it's Krishna appearing as a woman, so it's not a little less gross, you know? But if like, a bunch of demons ogling over like Radharani, like that'd be really disturbing. So that's I guess something I was thinking about. That's kind of like, wow, I'm very glad that, this way, it seems like it accomplishes the task, and there's nothing kind of uncultured or so gross about it because it's just Krishna, you know, taking on this form for the sake of this pastime, as opposed to actually having some woman go to perform the task. That'd be pretty weird, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this so well, but it just came to mind.
You know, Mukunda Charna, his mind is very beautiful, you know. One time Rajendra Nana Prabhu was giving class, and at the end, Mukunda Charna raised his hand and he had a question. He said, in Vaikuntha, are we going to still offer Bhoga to Krishna? Something like that, you know, and Rajendra Nana Prabhu just started laughing, you know. And then so it just reminded me of, you know, the way you think. But I appreciate it.
Well, the other thing, I stopped asking questions at one point with Rajendra Nana Prabhu because I was asked a question. He said, all right, rather than like recapping the class and then to get to your question, do you just ask your question?
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
No, we have to have the mic. But those who want to leave, like,
So I had a clarifying question. A couple of times now they've talked about reincarnation, and they mentioned the notion that if you reincarnate into what you were thinking about as you die, so it's essentially what you're most attached to. And the example commonly given is a man reincarnating into the body of a woman. Is there a suggestion there that that is not an ideal or not a good thing, or is there a weight of is there a weight attached to that?
Well, our idea is that we don't want to come back again at all. We want to leave this material world. So whether you take a man's body or a woman's body or a hog's body or a dog's body, camel, ass, you know, you're still going to be prone to birth, disease, old age, and death. So we want to leave this material world completely, you know. And so yeah, that's another debate, you know, whether it's better to have a man's body or a woman's body, you know.
Okay, so it's more so like a sock flying in the wind, like it's going in the direction that your consciousness was going.
Yeah, Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Sock flying in the wind, is that your own thing? Sock flying in the wind? Is that
Yeah, it's the title of my next book.
what's flying in the wind?
a sock.
If I may add, I think one reason why that's especially like packs a punch with Govardhan, when Govardhan uses it with some of these men he meets on book distribution, is because specifically that man, this man is someone who is like actively objectifying and like abusing women or like using women, and then just like some, and so the idea of like coming back as a woman, you know, is particularly scary to him. Just like some book distributors, they use more commonly, I'd say, than that. The more commonly used line that sometimes book distributors use is, you're going to come back as a cow. You know, you're eating meat and you're going to come back as a cow. Just as you're exploiting and, you know, abusing so many cows, you're going to come back as a cow and experience that same, you know, suffering. And that like really packs a punch, you know, when someone's eating a hamburger and you tell them that. And I think, you know, so I think that's one reason why he likes that as an example there, because for this person, the person like really kind of freaked him out.